Second stick's that because I was talking through and I want to see that nice sharp waveform. Sharp waveform in order to do everything because I'm a video editor.
I didn't say anything.
Nope, this is all me. Okay, and hello and welcome everyone to the return of the show. I'm Ben, that's Abraham, and today we are talking about Rings of Power. This is episode 5.
Yep.
Yeah, we're talking about episode 5. This is the show's going. We're getting places.
Is it really going?
I'm not gonna lie though. The big critique. We're still kind of feeling like the show is slow.
They should have already gotten or been on the road to Middle Earth by now. Everybody, Numenor's plotline should have been taken care of. Taken care of an episode ago.
This is baffling. This is the most expensive television show to ever be created.
Is it really?
Yes. Oh, you didn't know that?
By how much? By what margin?
We're going to pause right now as I go and look at how expensive...
I'm afraid to know how expensive...
I have to look up this number because I do not want to miss that. Rings of Power had a whopping budget of $715 million.
Jesus Christ.
715. Second most expensive is The Crown.
No, second is actually Stranger Things.
Oh, it's Stranger Things. Oh, yeah, I guess that would have happened since season 4 of Stranger Things.
Then WandaVision, House of Dragon, and then The Pacific.
Yeah. So real quick, as far as how expensive is,
these things are not worth $58 million an episode. There's no fucking way. That's.
Yeah. This is the most expensive show to ever be created, and to have it have a problem that's as simple as pacing throughout the season is not great for a streaming service.
Yeah.
Even if it is Jeff Bezos, and this just dinged his pocket by a little bit, maybe.
Oh yeah, it was nothing for him.
This is still like a gross amount of money to go into a show.
If I'm being honest, the reason why it costs so much is because of the environment, special effects, all of those things. Which, granted,
they look great.
Show looks fucking amazing, but I would much rather take a show that's on a lower budget that is paced and written perfectly than a mediocre show that has meh writing and amazing special effects.
So I do want to preface, because this is I think this is the first episode where we're really opening up with some heavy critiques on the show.
Yeah.
We're not coming at this from I'm a fan of the Lord of the Rings, as people that have been following might know, but we're not coming at this from a standpoint of we're the fandom and fuck this show.
I'm not a hater. I'm kind of actually indifferent.
Yeah. You have no experience with Lord of the Rings. You haven't even seen the movies. I want this to be good. I went in with extremely low expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And I am just trying to keep this critique as simple as possible and just based off what's happening. And fact is, we're 5 episodes in, and if you we have
3 more left.
We have 3 more. We haven't really hit a midpoint crisis yet. Even it still feels like we're in Act 1. It feels like this first season is being treated as Act 1 for a larger story.
Yeah,
and I don't think that that's a good thing for a television show to do. Granted, if this is a complete work, if they make the rest of these and then having the slow Act 1 turns out to be worth it, fine. But as far as a single series of television is concerned, this is not really doing it for me.
I'm not gonna lie. I think an Act 1 for a single contained piece of media is fine. Dune actually did this very well. The movie when it came out, that whole thing was an Act 1.
Yeah,
but because all the characters went through such compelling and crazy situations, they were really put to the test each and every minute that they're on screen. It felt compelling. Whereas here, I'm still I feel like everybody's kind of wading in the water a bit.
Yeah.
Like, we're not sure where we're going. We're not sure where we've been.
Well,
People are kind of trying to figure things out as opposed to like trying to feel things out as opposed to trying to get answers, moving forward explicitly with intention to try and drive their own story forward.
And so we're now at the point where like I can feel like we can pretty much tell that the climax of this season is going to be the siege on the Southlands.
Yeah.
That's the only place, just based off of the Southlands storyline, that's the only place that's going. And there are also some weird timeline things that I'm thinking about now, where we don't know if Gladriels' army from Numenor is even going to arrive in time for the Southlands fight. That doesn't really make sense with the way that we saw the meteor and everyone's stories in the beginning, because Gladriel's story seems to take place over months, while the story for the Southlands seems to be taking place over maybe a month.
Right. Did Gladriel see the meteor?
So Gladriel didn't see it. However, the King of the Elves, whose name I do not have up immediately for referral, he did see it as like after she took off.
The timeline could still make sense. This, like, everything that's happening in Numenor could be happening before everything that's happening in the Southlands, and then they will,
that hopefully everything comes together. So I guess to start out though, there are some good things to say. So last week we did have some critiques in particular about where the direction was going on with Galadriel's character. We had been kind of withholding judgment up until last episode because it was frankly too early to call, but we started seeing some character directions that we were not too happy with. Namely in the fact that Galadriel's faults are being treated not as faults. And this episode did a good job of addressing that, actually.
They finally have a scene where she expresses her feelings. Her
feelings! Galadriel expresses feelings, something that we just want our characters to do.
Yep.
How did you feel about this scene? How do you think it did its job, or do you feel like it has more work to do?
I'm not gonna lie. I feel like it's too little too late. As much as like I appreciate the fact that they are aware of Galadriel's position in the story, as much as they're aware of the character that she is and the character that she wants to become and how they need to get from point A to point B, I still feel like because of everything that happened in episode 1, because we're already over halfway through the season, because we haven't really gotten anything meaningful to happen as far as the larger story and her confrontation with Sauron, I feel like really the only way that this can be salvaged is if they actually get her into the thick of it, she loses, and then she has to confront that again.
Yes.
That's the only way that I can really see this character like becoming like my favorite. Because right now I think it's just okay.
Yeah. So this scene was mainly driven by the fact that Gladriel, like, it's kind of funny because Halbrand was like, you need to learn how to play politics. And then she's like, bet I'm going to go play politics and I'm going to put words in your mouth and use you for political gain in this situation. Which friends don't do.
Well, I mean, cause she kind of actually puts it in like a very good in a good point, even though that's wrong for her to do that. It's kind of like a thing where she was like, well, people would be saying that you're using me because for all intents and purposes, this is the thing that he's wanted.
Yes.
Which is why I was especially confused at first when he was like, you had no right to tell me that, you want me to be a king, to be a leader for people? How dare you?
And of course, he's great at politics and manipulation, which further begs into last week's theory of is Halbrand Sauron. We'll wait and see.
Yeah,
but we're kind of in this situation where like she has this moment, and he calls her out on it. And I will say, this is part of it. Like, you can watch last week's episode if you're confused about like our critiques on that. I don't want to lean too much back on that conversation, but she doesn't really apologize for that kind of action and barely acknowledges like, hey, that was not a great thing to do. Like, I personally could have done with a character that's like, I recognize that I did something bad, but here's a bunch of other things to go along with it.
Right.
That being said, we finally, like, this is the one time that she's finally like I've been going through this stuff. I'm now being forced to look at myself because of what you're saying.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily like what I see, which is exactly the kind of thing that needs to happen. But the issue is that it seems that her motivation within that scene is like she came in like half expecting, half anticipating to apologize. She she came into that room with sort of like a half apology and trying to reconcile with him in order to get what she wanted out of the situation.
Right.
And then he forced her into he forced her into confronting herself.
Which is not like something where she actually wanted to actually do that for herself.
Yes.
And that's not necessarily an issue.
That's not a bad thing. This is a story pacing issue.
Yeah.
Where this is something that would be better to do
early.
In an early act, but because usually, like if you're talking about how a story is paced, the midpoint crisis is where a hero is forced to look at their flaw and figure out if they need to turn themselves around.
So yeah, it would have worked better if in episode 3 this conversation happened. They have a fight, they explode, but it's not really resolved until a later episode where it's now like...
this is me looking at the show as being just one season as a whole story.
Yeah.
And for those purposes, Gladriel's writing isn't doing great, but also the entire pacing of an 8-episode series or season isn't doing great either at this point. So we can expect sort of character things like this to happen, unfortunately.
I'm not gonna lie, I cannot give that as an excuse because the boys invent like
no.
8 episodes is...
This is not an excuse. This is a symptom.
Oh, fair.
This is a symptom of the problem. I'm like, this show's already doing terrible on pacing.
Yeah.
Like, Stranger Things had an 8-episode season, and we got to see that kind of thing from like Mike in season 1. Granted, if we're talking about Stranger Things, I don't think Mike's character is loved anymore.
Well, that's
a different podcast.
That's besides the point. Speaking also of Halbrand, in that scene, we actually do get a little bit of his backstory.
We do.
But it's super vague and means nothing.
So it implies that he, along with some other people, worked for Sauron.
Well, that is the implication based only on editing.
Yes.
Because he's like, you don't know what I had to do, what we all had to do to survive. And it fades to the townspeople in the Southlands, pledging their loyalty to Adar. But that could literally mean the exact opposite in this instance, because if he's talking about survival, it could literally be talking about the survival of the orcs and Sauron after the elves defeated Morgoth. Whatever.
Yeah.
He's dead. He's not here anymore. He's dead.
Okay. So, technically he's in prison. It's weird.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll brief. Wait. Technically he's in prison. There's actually a further. So, let's say that what he's implying is not true, and let's go back to Halbrand to Sauron.
It's not. I want to also clear up. He wouldn't be lying.
No, he wouldn't, and that's what makes it excellent. Because there's actually a further read into this that, for the deep lore people that might be a little bit more familiar with, on how the first stage went down and how Sauron became like under Morgoth's wing and all that stuff. So
okay.
Yeah, Morgoth's of Valar. He is in charge of things.
Mm-hmm.
He's the first Dark Lord.
Okay.
Sauron at some point decided to go work for Morgoth, seeing it as the best option for his personal interest.
Okay.
At this point, though, there was not active rebellion against the other gods going into Middle-earth and fucking shit up.
Right.
Then Morgoth does this, and then suddenly Sauron is exiled.
Because he chose
to go with this other person following up. So the entire story that he tells of like, I did terrible things to survive. I chose things, implying that he worked for Sauron. He could also easily just be implying that he worked for Morgoth in those same exact circumstances, that he was exiled from his home. And in that, if people knew who he was,
so you're saying
they would cast him out.
So Sauron is just like a guy who was like, yeah, I'm going to fight for this guy. And then the guy turns out to be evil. And then he's like, what the fuck, bro?
He wasn't like, what the fuck, bro? He was like, I see the means to an end that you're trying to get. But then he understood Morgoth. He understood what the goal was: create their own form of life, having freedom as Valar in order to pursue creativity.
Yeah.
But because of that, he is technically in exile. Like, Middle Earth's not his home.
Yeah.
So everything that was said is factual to Sauron's story.
And again, back to the dramatic irony, it makes the most sense logically just for this to be Sauron.
Well, from a narrative standpoint, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And because we don't know, like in the Lord of the Rings, the movies, we don't get a lot of, if I'm understanding this correctly, we don't get a lot of backstory and character work from Sauron.
No character work from Sauron.
Which is why, if this is Sauron, this is the most interesting way to do it.
His whole thing is he's a trickster. So, like, this is the kind of thing that you can anticipate. Like, he is the equivalent to Loki. And not in the MCU sense, but within, like, the Norse mythology sense.
Yeah.
Like, he's very close to how Loki is as a trickster god.
It would fit. And he was getting all up in her face, too.
Yeah.
Like, that scene reads very differently. When he's talking about her brother,
yeah,
that scene reads completely differently if that's Sauron.
Here's the thing. Like, from a cinematography standpoint, I understand the really tight close-up on Gladriel.
Yeah.
But having the close-up on him, as well as an upward angle establishing power from him...
Yeah.
It really, like, you can tell during that scene that he's digging into her.
Yep.
Which
it did seem,
if you're reading if you're reading the Sauron take on it, if we're supporting the Sauron theory, it works.
Because it did feel at least a little bit like he liked doing that. And it's not just now, it's honestly their whole dynamic.
Yeah. He likes getting her to do things. And again, as Galadriel points out, everything she does benefit him.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, this is all us, like, this is deductive reasoning, this is inductive reasoning that we're approaching. We're approaching with a theory and then seeing what supporting evidence leads to.
No, not necessarily. I feel like it's kind of back and forth. It started with that, but this episode specifically, because of the camera choices, dialogue choices, and
you're
editing,
feeling pretty strongly.
I feel more strongly about it this week than I definitely did last week.
Interesting. Okay.
It's that scene and the choices that they made. You were talking about camera angles. That
it
purposely being vague 5 episodes into this story. We don't know anything about this fucking guy.
Yep.
Who the fuck is he?
Well, speaking of someone else that we know nothing about and also might be Sauron, based off of just the entire conversation on the internet, the Meteor Man. I will say there was a scene later where that old man was in front of Adar and he's like, "You're Sauron, aren't you?" And I'm like, that's been the entire conversation around this fucking show, hasn't it?
Adar is Sauron. Yeah, just you're Sauron, right? Hey, yeah. Pledge my loyalty. Yeah, I feel bad. The Hardfoots just didn't have anything to do this episode.
God,
they got chased by some dogs.
The preview was so good. I was like, they're gonna get chased by wargs.
You watched the preview?
Well, I watched the preview last week, and it was like, we're gonna get some wargs, and they're gonna be chasing the hobbits. And I'm like, Hobbit focused episode. Let's fucking go.
Nope.
2 scenes.
Yep. I kind of figured it just because I feel like they have to wait until Meteor Man, like until the end, the last 2 episodes, to really pay off on the Heartfoots.
Yeah,
because what's interesting about them? They're just nice people.
They're pleasant people, and they have a magic man.
Yeah,
which is the less popular version of the magic girl genre.
Yeah,
but
magical man genre.
Magical man. I want to see animes that are just about old magical men following around. No, wait a minute. Nope, I'm gonna detract.
Go
that.
Ahead.
Yep. You detract that statement.
We should talk about how the Meteor Man almost froze Nori's hand. That was a scene.
I thought the show was about to get really dark, and when she got launched back,
a hand gone.
Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, that's not going with you. You got frostbite and everything on that, but she seems relatively okay.
I mean, maybe she's just sturdy like that.
I mean, she's definitely not happy with Meteor Man, which also, how sad if he's not Sauron. How sad.
Yeah,
how sad how sad that entire I think it was 2 or 3 scenes of I'm danger, and then he protects her, and then he hurts her, and then she runs away from him.
Because here's the thing, I also can't imagine this guy just being a nice guy. Because he's already a nice guy.
He's already, yeah, it's where does this character go?
Yeah.
So if we're okay, if we're going off of what the show kind of wants us to believe and not what theory is, let's say he is a wizard. Let's even go the crazy route of the thing that's likely not canonical, and say that he's Gandalf, which a lot of the people that are not familiar with what's going on would initially have thought. Like, he's an early version of Gandalf.
Okay.
Like, this could be, like, if there was a version of Gandalf that came to Middle-earth and then died and then went back and then came to Middle-earth later, because they can do that.
Would they look different?
Yes, they would.
Oh, so it could be.
Yeah, so it could be. They can take on whatever shape people give them. It's weird. Okay. As I say about most token things, it gets really weird. I have to read like 5 Wikipedia articles in order to get there, or the entirety of the Silmarillion twice.
Yeah, no thank you.
Silmarillion's a tough read. In order to, like, if we're reading into that, this could be like why does Gandalf really, really like the hobbits? Maybe in his first iteration, he was here, he self-sacrificed, and he did it for these hobbits.
Oh, yeah.
That is a possible Gandalf backstory as to what, because Gandalf really fucking loves the hobbits. He's the only wizard that's like, I like the hobbits. They, like, other wizards make fun of him because it's like, dude, you smoke the hobbit weed so fucking often. You're so stupid.
So this really could just be Gandalf.
Hypothetically, but the blue wizards also showed up around this time, and we know nothing about them, so they're a blank slate.
Could they be both? Could he be both? Could Gandalf be a blue wizard?
It's very interesting because I'm not sure if the blue wizards had always been around at the same time as the gray wizard, but I know that the blue wizards showed up in Middle-earth around this time. However, Gandalf was originally Gandalf the Grey and then became Gandalf the White midway through. So it is possible for him to have showed up as like, I'm so-and-so the blue, and then, I died, and then I come back and
now I'm the Grey.
And exactly. Like, that's possible. That's a real thing that can happen.
What does it mean, the blue, the white, the gray? Like,
in layman's terms, it's kind of like the wizard rank. Like,
I'm guessing white is the
white's
top.
White's at the top, gray's second to the top. Then there's the brown, which is Radagast, who is just kind of like a tree hippie.
Cool.
And then there are the 2 blue wizards, which there's like just very, very little information on.
Okay.
So if he is a wizard, he's a blue wizard. Maybe he dies and comes back as Gandalf the Grey. That's possible.
This actually could relate to the weird-looking white people that we saw later on.
That is,
which we'll talk about that later on. But first, we got to talk about that good old-fashioned Mithril.
Oh my god. Okay, so
we saw a Balrog. We're right.
Yeah, I was like, there's gonna be a Balrog. Interestingly enough, that's not the shot in the fucking trailer.
Oh, so there's gonna be
another Balrog shot at some point.
Cool.
Regardless, that was pretty fucking cool. You got to see what a Balrog looked like.
I mean, I said this to you before we started taping. I couldn't tell where the mouth was. It's like, I was like, are those teeth or are they a horn? What's going on?
You'll get some more defined shape later. However, whether or not like if you watch Fellowship of the Ring, well, it's funny because you were like, oh, it's just a black blob with some flames. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the
Balrog.
That's kind of the thing. Okay. Like the way that they do the Balrogs in the movies, at least, they always sort of let them be flame that gives way to shape, so that your mind is kind of filling in like some of the gaps.
That's actually cool.
So like it's a really cool cinematic language there. There is like there's a couple shots in the second movie where you can see more defined shape, but it's like there's a strike of lightning and then you see like a little bit of like edge light lighting up the Balrog.
Nice. Okay.
Which is a great way to do horror imagery for a giant demon. It's also a great way for when you're working with 2002 or 2002 to 2008 computer CGI.
Yeah,
that's a great way to deal with the limitations there.
That is cool.
And I do like that they translated some of that over. Like the Balrog is like there's nothing but black behind it when you see that poetic scene. As for the creation of Mithril, this is new.
Okay.
This is not in the original canon at all.
Mithril
is there.
But is its creation ever discussed?
Its creation is never discussed as being it's never discussed as being part of one of the Lost Cimmerals. It's never discussed as being it's never discussed as being part of the Lost Cimmerals. It's never discussed as like there was a battle between a Balrog and an Elven warrior, and the Elven warrior put all of his life into a tree. The Balrog that, and then the
electricity struck the tree, went through the roots into the mountain, got infused with the light, the rocks and light. Yep.
Yeah, that whole thing. That's all new.
Okay.
I will say the good news here is that I saw some people looking at this as a retcon, and I'm like, it's not a retcon if it doesn't change previously established lore.
Because it's just new lore.
This just gives a backstory to what Mithril is. There's, as far as we know, the only way that it can be considered kind of a the only way that can be considered kind of a what's it called a retcon is that in one part of it was either Lost Tales or the Silmarillion, Tolkien / his son wrote of the apocalypse and and like how that will finally go down, and it's in the form of legend. So like at some point the three Silmarils will be brought back together, Morgoth will break out, and then there will be this great final battle that will end all things. And in order for that to happen, the three Silmarils have to be brought back together. I believe there is only one known Silmaril that has ever been freed from wherever Morgoth got rid of it. And that one is currently with Elrond's dad.
Okay. The guy who's carrying
he's carrying a star.
Son. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
He's carrying a star. So yeah, that's kind of like as much as we know as far as what this does to the lore. If you were to take this as like an official lore thing or as official expansion, it doesn't change. It doesn't change big things as far as Mithril was originally described. It was just described as a precious ore that the dwarves mined and was an important resource for them, and was eventually traded with the elves.
It also could be, I mean, because like I would say that I wouldn't, I don't want to say this like outright just because they did show that fucking crazy shot.
Yeah.
So I hate to just put this out there knowing that, but it could just be a little bit BS. Not necessarily all of it. Like there might be some truth to it, but again, we don't know exactly what the fuck is up with the tree, why it's corrupting 100%. We don't really know what the king's intentions are. The fact that he hid this and hid the true nature of why he wanted to confront the dwarves speaks more volumes, because it'd be like a very easy thing if you're like, if you're an elf and you know of a substance that was essentially created by your kin, you would want to be upfront about that, tell them about it so that you can be like, hey, why don't you help us out?
Well, also there's a really important trade-off here. It's like, hey, you help us out, we continue living, and also you get access to a really powerful ore, and we can help you find it because we know what to look for.
We know what it is.
Yeah, we know what it is. We know what its properties are. We can help you out with that. And you're right. There's some problems there because that is a much easier trade. And I will say, I love Durin. He's
not making it. He's not making it to the end of the show.
He's too good of a man. He's too good of a man. He's like, the fate of the elves is in my hand, and of course he's like, I'm gonna help my friend who is an elf.
Elrond too. I'm like, we talked about this last time, how Elrond is probably gonna betray Durin unknowingly or somehow like that, which is gonna lead to the later distrust between elves and dwarves.
Yeah.
That didn't happen.
Nope.
Not this episode.
Nope.
And he like multiple times was like if you like, is it better to keep a promise to a friend or to save literally the entirety of your race? And he's like, I choose friends every time.
Yeah, and he just made it very simple. He was like, I am going to ask you about this, and it is up to you. He completely went in and was like, I need your consent on what's going on here. Do you want to help?
Because also he didn't know why he was even being sent.
Yeah.
So like, yes, there was like there was shady shit going on, but he didn't know the extent of it. So he was like, hey, I didn't know about the shady shit. I just found out.
Yeah.
I'm telling you first.
Yeah, and like that's good. He did good things.
Yes.
I'm very happy with like how this turned out.
Yeah.
They're the best dynamic in the show.
It could have been so easily, like, it could have so easily been fucked up if he did a betrayal.
Yeah.
Like, I'm so glad that didn't happen. It's going to be, they're saving it.
Yes. We'll wait and see. I am curious to see if your theory about Mithril as being bullshit is bullshit, though, because it would shake things up rather interestingly.
Not necessarily the story, but of like how it was created, but it's like what they need it for, maybe. Like it could be like one of those things where like there's a nugget of truth.
Yeah.
But a lie underneath. Like, you know, the best way to tell a lie is to put a little bit of the truth in it.
That is fair. So. And there's one thing that this show is very strange, because when you take a look at things, it's like there is a lot of lying going on. There's a lot more political subterfuge than I was anticipating in a Lord of the Rings show. Yeah,
and in Game of Thrones, it's the same way, but like it's played outwardly so that the audience is in on it.
Yes.
Whereas now we're kind of like
something's not quite adding up with everything. What's going on?
Yeah.
So, speaking of something that's not adding up, there was that man. Are you Sauron? You're Sauron, aren't you?
Don't you dare say that name to me! Bah!
And then here, stab the boy.
Kill the
kid. And my partner turned to me and was like, "Oh, that's not his kid." I'm like, "No, that's just just a kid that's actually stolen from him twice. That kid has no shot at making it out alive."
Nope.
This man was hiding a dagger, hiding a sword hilt from Sauron that made a bunch of magic blade.
Yep.
He's not going to have any qualms about killing this dude.
Yeah, he was basically like, "Hey, you and me, kid, you and me, we're secret terrorists. We're gonna take this shit down from the inside. We're loyal to the Dark Lord. Don't tell anybody."
Yep, and
kid didn't do that, but
yeah, no, good for the kid. Even though he was still pretty racist at the kid. Yeah, the kid to the elf. He was like, "You guys have been looking over us for all this. How could I possibly trust you?" And it's like,
I mean, yeah, but
he makes some valid points from a like. Is that like the question is, do the elves count as cops?
Yes.
Is so? Other question: is Rings of Power propaganda?
Well, we gotta wait till it's over. It could. Well, no, because it depends. It depends on how the season ends. That's all I'll say. Anyways, back to the matter at hand. Adar, I was not prepared for that question. Yeah. As you can see.
Yeah, just remember, there's a strong chance ACAB applies to all the elves.
So Adar is not Sauron, obviously.
Yes.
He's mad that he would even be compared to them.
Yes.
Is that from a, how dare you compare me to a lower person, or my higher?
I think it's my higher.
I'm thinking lower.
You're thinking the opposite.
Because it's just because of what you said earlier about Sauron basically working for Morgoth. And the fact that there is like that underling kind of angle to Sauron makes it seem like this guy might be in a similar position where he's like, I want to work for my boss Morgoth, but Sauron is like horizontal to me.
So
not
okay, I see. So potentially another lieutenant, probably instead of being an elf, maybe another Malar. So this is where things are a little tricky on trying to figure this out. So they're looking for a hilt that has the mark of Sauron on it.
Yeah.
This is one of the reasons why I think it's above, because from Gladriels' discoveries, we understand that Sauron's plan is like, hey, get your asses to the Southlands, which is that little crevice of a trident-shaped mountain that everyone's in right now. Get your ass there. Do it now. Do it. You got to get there.
Right.
And this guy's operating there.
Yeah.
He's doing the operation there. He's building an army of orcs in the Southlands. So he's already doing what we know to be Sauron's plan. And then on top of that, we have this situation where he's making the orcs.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's going along with this, and they're looking for a dagger that has the mark of Sauron explicitly on it.
Right.
For those reasons, if he is not if he's not working for Sauron, he's at least enacting he's at least enacting that plan.
Yes, but could that be in a sort of like competitive rivalry type of thing? Could this guy be like against Sauron but working towards the same motive for personal benefit? You know,
That's tough.
Could it be like, I'm jealous of Sauron, I'm gonna be the big bad and I'm gonna destroy the sun before he can?
Oh yeah, we haven't even talked about that line.
Which we'll get there.
So it's possible. I think that I feel like you are not 100% wrong. I feel like your theory has a lot of valid points. I'm just a little bit more in the camp of like, if you're going to enact that,
it would be easier if everybody was on the same page and just kind of.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying.
Like
I'm just shooting shit at the wall. Just I feel like anything is possible at this point.
It is a valid take that potentially this is a thing. I don't. Yeah, I'm just more inclined to believe that it's a like, how dare you compare me to a god? Because the other thing is like, this man is very clearly closer to Elvish.
Yeah,
and
he doesn't burn in the sun.
Yeah, he doesn't burn in the sun. He has elven features. He's where we talked about this last time, but he has a neck piece that it has almost similar to the exact designs of the King of the Elves. There's a lot that's pointing towards him being an elf and not a Malar. Now that being said, if he is trying to use Sauron and like sort of like the Sith rule of two, trying to get himself up there, that's still possible. But we do have to talk about that sun comment, though.
Yeah, he's like randomly just like, he's sitting in the sun. He asks the orc to like take off the bandage or the wrap so he can expose himself. And he's like, last time I'll be able to bask in the light.
Yeah. So
troubling.
It is troubling. So I will say, you talked about getting rid of the sun. There's precedent for this.
Well, I mean, literally in the beginning of the show, there's that whole thing where they were like, we used to be on this place where the only source of light was a fucking tree.
Yep.
And if the tree is also going to be gone pretty soon.
There were two trees. There's one for sunlight and one for moonlight.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, the point still stands.
This could be their master plan to get the orcs back to full power so that they can just fucking
wreck everything.
Yeah.
So this is extremely valid because I'll go through some history of Middle Earth stuff right now.
Okay.
Before the trees, before the first age.
Okay.
The world was lit by 2 lanterns instead. And you know who put those out?
Hold on. Before I even entertain that rhetorical question, do you mean metaphorical lanterns or
no, giant fucking lanterns?
Okay. Okay. So who did that? You're asking me?
Yes.
Fucking, I don't know, Gandalf. God, I don't know.
Jesus Christ. It was Morgoth.
Oh, okay.
Morgoth. So, like, essentially, before the first age, they created the world, and Morgoth was like, "I'm gonna turn off the light." And then at the same time, he was like, "I'm gonna fuck everything up." And like, the world used to be this perfect, like, symmetrical place, and then he turned it into like loose continents and shit. And they're like, fuck, you ruined the natural order." So they locked him away for 3 ages, and then after 3 ages, they're like, "Okay, cool, you're on parole. Get out of here."
And then he's like, "Screw you, I'm gonna be evil now."
Yeah, and then it's just like, well, it was more like, "Fine, I'll be good for a little bit," and then he like went off, put his people back together, and then took out the trees, and then started fucking shit up with the elves.
Look, I mean this in like absolutely no disrespectful way for anybody who likes this. That's the stupidest fucking explanation I've ever heard.
Remember, this man was the pioneer of fantasy. Someone had to do it first. Doesn't mean that they got everything kind of right on the world building side the first time.
I mean, like, it's creative, I'll give it that, but it's just so out there, and it's so like devoid of like anything resembling our logic that like I just kind of like have to just go, you know what, fuck it. There's 2 lanterns, and he turned off the lights, and then he went to jail,
I'm
and then
not
got
gonna
on
lie.
parole.
We're not even sure that celestial bodies exist in the same way as here. I don't think they're balls of fire.
Move
They
on.
might just be holes in the sky.
Just move on. Just move
Anyway,
on. I don't even. I don't.
So that is the precedent for what you're talking about. They could easily be trying to get rid of the sun.
Okay.
What we know is going to happen though is Mordor is the Southlands will turn into Mordor.
Yes.
Mordor is a place that the sun cannot reach. So since they are in the Southlands, they could be trying to enact like we will create
like our own haven. Gotcha.
And blight out the sun from reaching into these mountains.
Possible. That honestly be a little bit more believable than just we're gonna turn off the sun for everyone. Yeah,
Although, here's the thing, because we know of times that exist after the Lord of the Rings, Morgoth eventually does get rid of the sun.
Oh, so it could.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is on the menu for Morgoth.
Fucking why not? It could literally be.
Yeah, it could be like they're trying to go for the sun and then it's like, we'll settle for Mordor. But like, that's kind of where they have to land.
Okay.
So there's precedent to what you're saying. They will not succeed in turning out the sun.
Or they could, and they could get reversed. Or they could get like a
it will not be
victory.
A permanent sun.
Yeah,
that sun switch will not permanently stay off. They're not cutting off the power. They're just playing with a light switch at best.
Okay.
Or putting up a parasol.
All right, we can keep talking about the magic system that makes no sense for days. Let's talk about these evil-looking white people.
Ah, yes. So, we met some evil-looking white people.
They're not elves.
They're not elves. No, their ears are actually explicitly curved.
Yep.
We see one ear of the one that's not wearing a hood, and then the weird one that
is bending down. And
bending down. By the way, this is the character that when they released a still, everyone was like, "Is that Sauron? He looks horrible." That's not how I imagined Sauron to look. It was fucking hysterical because no one said that he was Sauron.
Every week, is this Sauron? Is that?
It was before the show released. They're like, "I think that's Sauron," and then everyone was like, "That's not how Sauron's supposed to look. He's supposed to be a beautiful elf. This looks like he's going to sell me meth." Like, he's
wow, if that's who you're getting meth from. Damn.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be good meth if it's from that guy.
Also, that's the thing you said about the blue wizards, the ranking. What are they called?
The blue wizards.
Wizards.
So the wizards have a ranking of white at the top.
Yep, gray, brown, blue. His eyes were a very piercing blue color.
They were.
And the other people were dressed in
all white.
White. Is it possible that these are a legion of wizards?
So this is the curious thing. The wizards are very specific. I have to look at. So they were all put on this plane to try and figure out what's going on with Sauron and to get him out.
Right.
That is the entire, like, if there's a mission statement for the wizards, it's, hey, we got to find where Sauron is and get rid of him. Mm-hmm. That's the entire reason why they're put on that plane of existence, is just solely for that.
Right.
These guys, there is a very important tell with him sort of bending over the place where the Meteor Man struck.
Yeah.
The way that he's holding over it, it can't be. You might assume that he's looking to see how hot the coals are, but we know that it's definitely been days.
Yeah,
there's been rain.
He looked like he was detecting something.
Yeah, odds are he's using magic.
Yeah.
Now, I said something very important at the beginning of this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Magic is not something that you will really ever see from people that are not using a magic item or
wizards.
So, like, there are instances of some of the elves having some magic that they can wield, but it's all, for the most part, item-based. Gladriel will eventually wield one of the 3 rings for the elves.
Right.
Like, the dwarves will have rings, and there's other magic items that do already exist that we've seen. Mm-hmm. And you can kind of see, like, people forging magic items, but innate magic that is coming from them
doesn't exist except for wizards.
Yes, which it's not just for wizards. It's explicitly for wizards and Malar, which are essentially the same rank as wizards, but that would include Sauron.
Okay.
And then Valar, which are like gods.
Gotcha.
So you have to be some sort of godly thing in order to wield this. So in a sad world where the writers were doing no intrigue, this is Sauron. In a sad world where I'm disappointed by the plot of this holy
the
guy, in a sad world where I'm completely disappointed by everything I'm seeing.
Sauron.
That's Sauron.
That's not Sauron.
Yeah, I'm saying narratively it would be really stupid for them to do that.
They're not that stupid.
Yeah,
I don't think they are. I hope
they're not. I don't think they are either because they are doing things that we're talking about. It's just pacing is really off. And pacing is its own sort of thing that lives within writing. That's not something that I can.
And pacing can get better, like when the show, like there's also the whole thing with like the pilotitis or like season 1 syndrome.
Yeah,
you know, like I'm sure if they get a second season, which they probably will, it'll probably be.
I think Jeff Bezos will greenlight this no matter what. I feel like also at that amount of money, there's this thing called sunk cost fallacy.
Yeah,
where if someone has that much money again, they will do it.
Yeah.
But probably not. It could be connected to the wizards though. Alternatively, there is the idea that this is a group that's looking for Sauron. We know that when the meteor comes, that is supposed to herald his arrival.
Yeah.
That's the idea. And these are people that clearly went to the meteor crashing site.
Yes.
So this leads us into either they are looking for Sauron to kill him, or they are looking for Sauron in order to bring him to full power. One thing that I just realized that I'm not quite remembering is that the Meteor Man was looking for something, a set of stars.
Yes, he was.
And we haven't really had much follow-up with that.
Because he's trying to go somewhere.
Yes.
Like, probably using that for navigation. Okay, so this might actually lead me into my fucking crackpot theory that I have right now.
Go for it.
And it really comes down to the limitations of what Sauron can do, which
it's a soft magic system, so he can do whatever the plot needs. Okay. Unfortunately,
because I'm thinking about it like this: we've been thinking that all this time narratively, it makes the most sense for Halbrand to be Sauron.
Yes.
However, it's weird because he doesn't have any magical abilities. At least he doesn't express it outright. He seems to be living a very humble life, but he seems to be having very attitudes and mannerisms that would indicate that he is of a villainous nature. And Meteor Man is someone who we don't know anything about. In fact, he's learning language as he goes from Nori. He doesn't really know anything about society, the world, anything like that. All he knows are like pretty much basic primal instincts, and he's learning it as he goes, and he needs to go somewhere. Is it possible that Sauron one day was like, fuck, I'm going to lose this war. So I'm going to split myself in two. One is going to be my human self, my mortal self, which will have all of my memories and will have my personality. I'm going to put them out in the world. And then the other version of me is going to be my magical abilities incarnate into a person. And then I'm going to send him away so that that can survive and that I could potentially inhabit that body or another body at some other point. And now he needs to get these two halves
together.
That, again,
way out there.
Is that possible?
So, I believe this is where we get into the weirdness of Tolkien. Because again, everything's weird. Tolkien is a soft magic system writer. Okay, the world that he has created is soft magic, which means that the protagonist's ability to solve a problem is completely limited by the audience's knowledge of how the magic works. Mm-hmm. That is not the case for the antagonist. So unfortunately, everything you just said could easily be true, despite the fact that there's no pretense for it. Because that's
infuriating.
That is infuriating because we don't have a magic system to work off of. So like, there is a point. Okay, I'm gonna just give you a slice of like weird things that exist in this world.
Go for it.
There's a talking dog, not explained. And that talking dog helps a human sneak into Morgoth's place and steal a Cimmeril from Morgoth's crown. That is a canonical thing that happens. A human, well, 2 humans and a dog sneak into Morgoth's palace, steal a Cimmeril from his crown while he's sleeping, and get out totally
shit.
fine. It is some Scooby-Doo shit.
Okay.
The idea for Sauron originally came from a talking cat that is also canonical to this world. And there's a bunch of talking cats that just vibe.
I mean, there's a talking dragon.
Yeah.
There's
a man named Tom Bombadil.
It sounds familiar.
Name that sounds familiar to you. Tom Bombadil, he's just a dude. He just vibes in the woods. He's doing his own thing. Frodo's he saves Frodo and all the hobbits from a tree that's like picking them up out of nowhere. And he just does it by singing to the tree. And they're like, wow, sir, you're really powerful. What's going on? And then they're like, hey, we need help getting rid of this ring. And he immediately picks it up, puts it on. Nothing fucking happens. Sorry, I bumped the mic. Puts it down and is like, yeah, no, I'm completely not affected by this. This is totally easy. Gives it back to Frodo. And they're like, hey, could you help us deliver it? And he's like, not my thing. He is...
Wait, what? You're talking about the ring?
I'm talking about the One Ring.
There's
a man who just exists. We have no idea what he is. Nothing. He just exists. He's not affected by the ring. He can alter reality by singing.
What?
He just exists.
Okay, look. So...
this world, if you were looking for a clear set of like, I think what's going to happen magically, if it's in the antagonist hand, you're not gonna get it.
That's so fucking stupid. I'm sorry, but this is why I prefer at least
I prefer hard magic systems for this reason.
Or at least as close to hard as you can get. Like hard with at least some form. Because if you have this loosey-goosey magic system, it makes everything feel like a Deus Ex Machina.
So that's the thing, is when it's in an antagonist hand, it's not a Deus Ex Machina. Because it's only creating further problems for your protagonist.
Yeah, because
it doesn't help with theory crafting.
Yeah, right.
But... that's the thing, is once a rule is presented, you have to abide by that rule. So rules are almost never presented on Magic for this reason.
So the reason why I'm saying that split in two thing is that, well, obviously the reasons why I made what I said earlier about they're both being potential candidates for Sauron, and it could be like an Occam's razor where they're both Sauron.
Yeah.
And then second, this crew of weird looking people, you just said that they're definitely using magic, so they naturally have to be
wizards. They have to be one of two camps.
And I don't see them as being people who are we're gonna help Sauron, because there's already the orcs, there's already the legion of Sauron that's slowly building.
But the strange thing is that they are very obviously framed as antagonists.
Are they?
I think so. There's something very sinister about these characters, especially the bald one that was leaning over.
It was just the one that was sitting down because he had weird eyes.
Well,
and the one woman that was, the two people that were actually on top of them had a lot softer expressions.
Yeah. I will say, antagonist does not mean good guy or bad guy. It just means that they're going to get in the way of a protagonist.
Honestly, you know.
So, if they come after Nori, then it's they were the good guys all along, and then then Proto Gandalf or Proto Sauron kicks their ass.
Yeah.
Then that's still their antagonist. But they're working for a greater good.
Yep.
So that doesn't differentiate.
No.
That does not disqualify your theory at all.
No, yeah. It's just
their role is definitely going to be sinister.
Yeah, it could be the twist. What? We were the good guys the whole time.
Yeah, exactly.
We were trying to stop him because he's actually Hitler in disguise.
That cute old man, actually Hitler. So, on this final bit, before we launch last into this, I guess you kind of answered a question that I was going to ask, is who do we feel like is Sauron this episode? Have our theory shifted?
Yeah, I feel like it's just, there's too many things in both camps that make me believe that both of them are Sauron. And if they're both going towards the Southlands.
Yes.
They both have an explicit direction that they're headed towards. they both are very vague in their backstories. The only two. These are the only two characters
Only
that are
two
vague.
characters, yeah.
And Sauron, as we know as a character, is both evil and magical, and we have yet to see a person who could fit the bill for both. These two characters independently could just fusion and fucking and fucking turn into Sauron. I don't know.
I think that is, unfortunately, I have to say that's valid, because soft magic system, if in the hands of antagonists, means anything goes.
It's valid, but it could literally be anything else.
Yeah, it like I do feel like it is going to be one of the two.
Yeah.
And we'll have to see. We do know, and this is the really important part. We do know that he's coming on. Well, actually, there's so many valid things about Halbrand, because Halbrand, we have zero proof that he was ever on the mainland. He totally let the other people on the boat with him die. He was originally trying to put Gladriel back in the ocean.
Yep. Like he teaches Gladriel how to be manipulative to get what she wants. And
then he gets
he gets in her face about her brother, a very sore subject, randomly.
Yeah.
Like
it's there's so much there. And then there's so much there on the, like, he's potentially, that's a magic man who we should not trust is good, especially just imagery alone when he lands, the fireball that he lands in is
the lines from Nori being like, he's important, I don't know how, but he is.
Yeah, and like the fireball that he lands in is shaped like the Eye of Sauron. Like, it's such an on the nose imagery thing that, like, it just can't be overlooked. So I guess on that, we're gonna end today on our fun token fact.
Sure.
So I was originally going to talk about Tom Bombadil, but I do have another one in the back because there's a lot to talk about. Elrond's dad.
Okay.
So
the guy who carries a son.
Yeah, he carries a star. So
But
he carries a star on a ship.
The star is the sun.
Yes. So did you know that Elrond's dad slew a dragon?
I didn't, but now I do.
So it wasn't just any dragon. It was the biggest dragon in the entire mythos. So this dragon, size of mountains, and he did it by they distracted the giant dragon with eagles, and he, on a ship with that stolen Cimmeril that I mentioned earlier on the top of his head, just plunged that ship directly through the dragon's heart. He's a dragon slayer. And there's also a dragon that's the size of mountains. And what they did for it was they just made it dizzy and plunged a ship through its heart.
Okay, so where did the corpse go?
You know, I'm not sure that's ever addressed.
Yeah, because everything.
I think it's in the north somewhere.
Sure, why not? Okay, what does that mean?
Maybe it's a new mountain range.
Oh, okay, it's in the mountains. All right, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
And that's our fun fact for the week.
This is just like a fucking like a rabbit hole. You ask one question and suddenly it's just like
20 more pop up.
There's 2 lanterns in the sky, and also his dad is an eagle man who rides on a flying ship and carries a star.
I haven't even got into Bird Mom yet.
Bye.